Egypt's e-visa, visa upon arrival, Sinai resort stamp, work visa, student visa, tourist visa. This video is going to go over all of the different types of visas to Egypt and answer all of the questions that you have about traveling to Egypt and how to get a visa. In this video, I'm going to cover a lot of different topics, like what types of visas are available, who can get an e-visa to Egypt, who can get a visa upon arrival, all of the frequently asked questions about these different types of visas, like what currency can be used to buy a visa upon arrival. I'm going to talk about the different processes for how to get each type of visa. I'm also going to talk about a travel agent letter, which some countries require, and how you can go about getting that, and also where you can find more resources about different visa types to Egypt. And before we jump into the video, if you don't know me already, my name is Gus. I started the company Egypt Adventures Travel because I love Egypt and I want to help people have amazing trips there. If you head to my website, egyptadventurestravel.com, you can learn more, and I would love to help out with your trip to Egypt or have you join on one of my group tours. So let's jump into talking about different types of visas to Egypt. The main type of visa that most travelers I work with are going to get is the entry visa upon arrival. This visa is the sticker that goes inside of your passport that you can purchase at Cairo International Airport or whatever airport you arrive to Egypt on. More on that later. So that's the first type of visa, the visa upon arrival, single entry visa. I'm also going to talk about the e-visa in this video. This is a visa that you can buy online in advance of your trip. There's a single entry option and a multiple entry option, but not every nationality can apply to this visa. So the single entry visa upon arrival, the e-visa. Then there are other types of visas that can be obtained from within Egypt, like a tourism visa that's for a longer period of time than the visa upon arrival. That I'm not going to really focus on this video because that has a whole nother set of processes and steps that you need to go through in order to obtain that visa. But that is an option for travelers who are going to be staying in Egypt for longer than the period of stay for their e-visa or their single entry visa. And then, of course, there are student visas and work visas, but I'm not going to cover those in this video because those don't really apply to people who are visiting Egypt for tourism purposes. And one last type of visa, it's not really a visa per se because it's just a stamp in your passport that allows you to enter the Sinai Peninsula. It's called the Sinai Resort Stamp, and this is available only to folks who are flying in to Sharm el-Sheikh International Airport, to St. Catherine International Airport, or to Taba International Airport, or folks who are crossing the land border that's between Jordan, Egypt, and Israel at Taba. And this visa is only good for 15 days for folks who are staying within that specific area in the Sinai Peninsula and staying at resorts. So somebody would not be able to use the Sinai resort stamp and then go down to Ras Mohammed National Park, for example, because that is considered outside of the zone that visa is good for. You could not fly into Sharm el-Sheikh and then stay at a resort there and do a day trip over to Cairo to see the pyramids and the Sphinx. You'd have to have another visa for that. And if you're flying from London and you're going to end up in Sharm el-Sheikh to stay at a resort, but if you're transiting through another city like Cairo, that visa will also not be available to you. You'll have to get the full visa to Egypt to enter Egypt. It's only for very specific circumstances. And to be honest, I don't work with a lot of people who use that Sinai resort stamp, so that's not something that I see very commonly, but it is another type of visa that's out there. This Sinai Resort Permission Stamp is available to folks who have EU membership country passports, folks who have a passport for the United Kingdom or for the United States, and also for Israeli tourists who are crossing via land at Taba. I don't know if that is open for Israeli passport holders at this point due to the conflict between Israel and Gaza, but those technically are the passport holders who can have that permission stamp for 15 days to stay within a very specific part of the Sinai Peninsula. Of course, it goes without saying, but I'll still say it, that Hurghada is not part of the Sinai Peninsula. So even though Hurghada is full of resorts, just like Sharm el-Sheikh, You cannot fly directly into Hurghada from Europe, for example, and then get the Sinai permission stamp, because Hurghada is not part of the Sinai Peninsula. You'd have to get your normal visa upon arrival or have a visa in advance like the e-visa in order to enter at Hurghada. Now, certain travelers don't need visas at all to visit Egypt. Travelers who are coming from Bahrain, from Kuwait, from Oman, from Saudi Arabia, or from the United Arab Emirates or the UAE do not need a visa in order to enter Egypt, and they can stay visa-free for up to 6 months. Travelers who are coming from Hong Kong, from Jordan, or from Macau also do not need a visa, and they're able to stay in Egypt visa-free for up to 3 months. Of course, like with any advice in this video, you need to do your own research from the government website for your relevant passport. So if you are a passport holder from the UAE, you'll need to check your country's State Department or consulate or embassy and make sure that they still have that 6-month visa-free exemption for Egypt. But as of this video, that is an option for folks who hold passports from those countries. There are also several other countries like Afghanistan, Morocco, Tunisia that have different visa exemptions for people who are above a certain age or below a certain age, or people of a specific gender. So checking those government resources, if you're from one of those countries, is the best way to know what the latest up-to-date visa requirements are. It might not need a visa in order to travel to Egypt if you're coming from certain countries in the Middle East or North Africa. Now that we've talked about the different types of visas, and I shared about that really special Sinai resort stamp, that's not really a visa, but just a special permission stamp, let's dig into each of the different types of visas that tourists can get in order to visit Egypt, and talk about the pros and the cons of each one, and talk about how to get that type of visa. So the first visa I want to focus on is the one that I have the most personal experience with, and the one that I recommend to the majority of my clients. It's the single entry visa upon arrival. This visa costs $25 and it essentially is a sticker that you'll purchase at the airport you arrive at. So if you arrive at Sharm el-Sheikh International Airport, if you arrive at Cairo International Airport, Sphinx International Airport, you'll buy this sticker for $25, and then that is your visa in order to enter Egypt. Countries that are eligible for the visa upon arrival include all European Union member countries. If you have a passport from one of those countries, you'll be able to buy your visa upon arrival in Egypt. Travelers from the United States, travelers from Australia, travelers from the United Kingdom, and travelers from several countries in South America like Brazil and Argentina. Checking your government website is the best way to know if you are able to get a visa upon arrival, though. So don't just take my word for it. Make sure you're doing your research and due diligence and checking before your trip to make sure that your government entity, like in the United States, the State Department, still confirms you can get a visa upon arrival to Egypt. The visa upon arrival is my preferred way to get my visa to enter Egypt because for me, it's the fastest, it's the most convenient, and it's the easiest option, and it costs the same as getting a visa in advance. I've been going to Egypt since 2012, and I've never had to wait at Cairo International Airport more than 15 minutes to buy my visa. And I'll tell you a little trick. When you're entering at Cairo International Airport, there are going to be multiple bank kiosks that you're able to purchase that visa upon arrival from. A lot of people will queue up at the very first bank, or they'll notice a line and then they'll join a line at one of the banks. But you can go to any of the bank kiosks and all of them will sell you the visa upon arrival if you're eligible for $25. So you don't need to wait in the super long line at one of the banks. You can go to another bank and buy your visa there. Using that strategy, like I said, I've never had to wait more than 15 minutes, even if I noticed other travelers are waiting quite a bit for one particular bank. Another tip, if you want to buy your visa upon arrival, is if you're working with a meet and assist agent, somebody who's waiting for you at the airport. I connect a lot of my travelers with these. Holding up a sign with your name on it, they'll be able to quickly get you to the fastest bank, purchase the visa for you. Oftentimes, they'll even take you through a special passport line or a diplomatic passport line to get your passport stamped and your visa checked sooner. So that's another strategy as well. Have you landed at Cairo Airport, Hurghada Airport, Sharm el-Sheikh Airport, Sphinx Airport recently, and have you bought a visa upon arrival? If so, drop a comment and let us know what your experience was like. Let us know what the wait time was. Let us know if you thought it was easy, if it was difficult, what your experience was like. That's going to help everybody just have a clearer picture, not just of my experiences, but other travelers' experiences as well with the visa upon arrival. Some frequently asked questions with the visa upon arrival. A lot of folks ask, are the visa counters open 24/7? Because I'm going to land at Cairo at 2 in the morning and they'll be closed. I won't be able to buy my visa. They're open 24/7, 365 days a year. So no matter what time your plane lands at Cairo International Airport or in Hurghada or in Luxor, you'll be able to purchase that visa upon arrival. Another question I'm asked really frequently is what type of currency do they accept for the visa upon arrival? They say the visa upon arrival is 25 US dollars, but they will also accept 25 British pounds or 25 euros. So you don't need to go through the hassle of picking up US dollars if you're coming, for example, from Spain. You can use 25 euros in order to buy the visa upon arrival. Make sure that the bills that you're using are nice, clean, crisp bills. They shouldn't have any tears. They shouldn't have any deep creases. They shouldn't have any writing or marker or any types of stamps or markings on them. And you should not use $1 bills if you're using US bills. You should be using a $20 bill and a $5 bill, or 5 fives, 2 tens, and a 5, but no $1 bills for that visa upon arrival. If you have a group of 4 travelers, for example, you can use a $100 bill. You don't have to have exact change for every single person, but you need to make sure that you're not using $1 bills or coins to purchase the visa upon arrival. Another really common question I get about the visa upon arrival is if you need to have a return flight ticket in order to get your visa upon arrival. I asked the Egyptian consulate this question several months ago, and the technical answer is yes. You need to have a ticket that shows that you'll be leaving Egypt within the period of that visa. So a visa upon arrival and an e-visa for single entry, the period is 30 days with an additional 14-day grace period. So you do technically have to have a ticket that shows that you are flying out of Egypt within 44 days of when you initially land. However, in practice, I've never been asked, nor has any person I've worked with been asked to show their ticket to leave Egypt. So this is a technical requirement. In practice, I've never heard of it being enforced. Have you ever entered Egypt and had somebody say they need to see your ticket where you're going to be leaving Egypt? If you've had this happen to you, please leave a comment and let me know, because I'd be curious to hear about your experience. Now let's talk about the e-visa. The e-visa is just like the visa upon arrival in that it is a single entry visa that's good for 30 days with the 14-day grace period. The big difference with the e-visa is that it's purchased online in advance of your trip to Egypt. Within 90 days before your trip to Egypt, you can go online to this website. Don't go to any other website. If you go to any other website, they will be adding on additional fees, kind of like scamming. I mean, it's not technically a scam, but they'll add on additional fees, and then they'll charge you those fees for the service of them getting your e-visa for you and filling out the paperwork. But go to this official government website, and that's where you can buy the e-visa for 25 US dollars. It costs the same as the visa upon arrival, but you're able to do it in advance up to 90 days before your trip. The benefits to doing an e-visa, I don't think an e-visa is the easiest and most convenient way to go, but the benefits of doing an e-visa are that you get the visa ahead of time. So for people who just get worried and nervous about the idea of going to Egypt and they don't have a visa yet and they have to get it there, you get that peace of mind knowing you have your visa already ready to go. Another benefit of the e-visa is that you're able to pay for that e-visa with a credit card, whereas in Egypt you'll have to use 25 US dollars cash. So for some people it's more convenient to be able to pay with credit card. Another benefit, a third benefit, is that You don't have to wait in line at a bank kiosk to buy the visa upon arrival. Now, in 12 years, I've never waited in line for more than 10, 15 minutes, and usually it's 5 minutes or less. However, some travelers say that they've had to wait in longer lines. So if you don't want to wait in a line in order to buy the visa upon arrival, the e-visa allows you to skip the line. In my experience, though, the amount of times that it takes to use the website and to get all of the different requirements filled out for the e-visa, it's a really complicated, clunky website. So in my experience, it's actually way faster in the overall scheme of things to just buy the visa upon arrival. Because when you buy it upon arrival, you don't fill out any paperwork. You don't have to do any extra steps like having a passport photo or anything like that. You just hand the person at the bank your passport, you hand them 25 British pounds, euros, US dollars, and then you get the sticker like that. Whereas with the e-visa, you'll have to fill out all of this information, like what address you're staying in Egypt, how long you're going to be staying in Egypt, all of your passport information, and they don't take any of this at the visa counter. And if you get an e-visa, you'll be getting a paper printout of the visa, and you'll need to make sure to have this paper printout printed out. So you'll get an electronic copy of it. You'll have to print it out and have it in a paper copy with you at the airport when you arrive in order for the border security agent to stamp your passport with your entry date. And a final benefit about the e-visa is that some folks want to purchase a multi-entry visa to Egypt. I've never done this personally. If you've done it, please leave a comment and let me know how the process worked. I'd even love for anybody to shoot me an email so I could talk to you some more, maybe interview you about the process, because I've never heard of anyone successfully getting a multi-entry e-visa and then being able to use it to enter Egypt multiple times. The visa upon arrival costs 25 US dollars, whereas the multi-entry visa is good for up to 180 days, and it costs 60 US dollars. So you'd still need to be entering Egypt at least 3 times in a 180-day period in order to get your money's worth from doing the multi-entry visa. But that's another option just for the e-visa. You're not able to purchase that visa upon arrival. Let's take a look at the e-visa website. So if you go to that link that I shared earlier, first you're going to need to create an account in order to apply for an e-visa. So this is just another reason why this takes way longer than just buying the visa for 25 US dollars upon arrival. But once you create an account, you can then create a new application. Your application is going to have a lot of information that you're going to need to fill out. Again, if you buy the visa upon arrival, you don't need to do any of this. So you're going to need to pick which application type you are, which visa type you are, if you're going for the single entry visa or the multiple entry visa. Then you're going to need to select which country you're traveling from. And then you're going to need to put down your expected arrival and departure dates for Egypt. Once you do this, your next step is going to enter all your personal information. The website's gotten a bit better in that it now gives you some guidance on what to enter, but some things are still confusing. It's pretty straightforward what your passport number is, but there are other fields like a middle name that are a bit trickier to figure out where to put. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of trial and error on the website to find what works. Another thing that's often confusing on the website is uploading your passport. There's all these different requirements for uploading your passport, but the most important one that trips up a lot of people is the file size. For some reason, the website doesn't allow your passport to be a certain sized file, which most images are going to be fairly large in size, like 1 megabyte or bigger. So you're going to have to take your passport photo, and then you're going to have to actually go to a separate website to get that photo resized. So for example, if your photo of your passport is 1 megabyte, you're going to need to resize it to make that file size smaller, like 100 kilobytes. Once you have that smaller size of your passport photo file, you can upload it. But here was even another issue that I ran into. I had to keep changing the name of the file until it was one that the website would accept. This is why I love just buying that visa upon arrival at the airport. My e-visa, when I applied for it, was approved in about a week, and I got this in an email. I censored out the personal information, and then I printed that out, paper copy, and had that at Cairo International Airport. I still had to wait in line. I just didn't have to go to one of those bank counters to buy the visa, but I still had to wait in line to have a border security agent stamp my passport, and put a visa into my passport. So even though I had this paper e-visa ready to go, it didn't really save me that much time. But I hope that that helps some people if they decide that they want to do the e-visa in advance of their trip. Now, my Canadian folks watching this video, listen up, and anyone else who's not able to get a visa upon arrival, listen up, or an e-visa. You have to go to a consulate or an embassy, Egyptian consulate or embassy, in order to get your visa in advance of your trip to Egypt. For Canadian passport holders, this unfortunately changed about 6 months to a year ago. So now Canadian passport holders need to go to the Egyptian consulate or embassy and follow the steps and the paperwork requirements. So contact your local consulate or embassy to figure those out. You'll have to get your visa in advance. For anyone else, this is also an option as well. I, as a US citizen, could get my visa in advance if I wanted to. However, it does not make sense at all in terms of the time it takes and the process and the paperwork that's involved. But for folks from specific countries like Canada, you now need to go to the Egyptian consulate or embassy's website. Sometimes their Facebook pages will also be a good resource, interestingly enough, and you'll have to follow the steps in order to apply for a visa in advance and get that actual visa from the physical embassy or consulate in order to then enter Egypt. And before I wrap up, I want to talk about some frequently asked questions. I've already covered some of these questions, like do you need to use US dollars or can you use British pounds? Can I buy the visa upon arrival at Cairo or at Hurghada? So I went through some of those questions already, but some other questions that I've heard very commonly asked are, what happens if I overstay my visa? So let's say you bought the visa upon arrival, it's good for 30 days plus a 14-day grace period, and you stayed in Egypt for 2 months. Well, Egypt recently has released several announcements and articles stating that they're going to start penalizing people for overstaying visas, potentially deporting people, fining people, or preventing people from entering Egypt again. So I highly recommend that no one overstay their visa. Make sure you know exactly how much time you have in Egypt. Do not overstay your visa. And if you do overstay your visa, make sure to visit the relevant government office. For example, there's one in Cairo that you can visit and you can figure out whatever your consequence will be, whether it's paying a fine or some other consequence for overstaying the visa, and trying to get that done as soon as possible to try to save you from any potential hassles at the airport or when you try to actually depart the country. So getting a fine, getting deported, potentially being banned from visiting Egypt again, those are all potential consequences of overstaying your visa. Will one of these consequences happen if you do overstay your visa? In Egypt, we know what the rules and what the letter of the law says, but then there's also what happens in practice. We're not sure if any of these consequences will happen, but I personally was fined once for overstaying my visa. It cost me about $100. Other travelers I've heard have been fined as well. I've never heard of anybody being deported or anybody being banned from entering Egypt again for overstaying their visa, but it's pretty serious. You don't want to deal with any of that type of hassle, so make sure you know what your visa period is and do not overstay the visa that you have. Another question that I'm commonly asked is if someone needs a travel agent letter or a tour company letter in order to get a visa to go to Egypt. Egypt requires certain countries, like folks who have a passport from India, to either have a very complete itinerary along with all of their bookings and everything written out, printed out to submit with their visa application, or they have to have a letter from a travel agency or a tour company that states that they're going to Egypt and sharing what their program is and basically vouching for this person in order for them to then apply and to get the visa to Egypt. So this is another thing that you'll have to make sure you check your government websites, talk to the government Egyptian consulate or embassy or your government's version of the State Department to figure out what you'll need in order to get your visa to Egypt. But any countries that are available for the visa upon arrival or for the e-visa in advance do not require this travel agent or tour company letter or certification that they're coming to Egypt and talking about their plan and itinerary and all of that. People also ask if they can purchase the visa upon arrival at Cairo International Airport or another airport with credit card. You can only use cash at this point in time, so credit cards are not an option. Make sure you have cash with you. If anybody's ever paid with a credit card, please leave a comment and let me know. But as far as I know, cash only. And sometimes people ask if you can pay with Egyptian pounds because they say, well, it's Egypt. Why do you have to pay for a visa with US dollars? You should be able to pay with local currency. One time, about 6 years ago, I was able to sweet talk my way into buying an Egyptian visa upon arrival with Egyptian pounds because I used Arabic and spoke Arabic with the person at the bank kiosk and explained that I had just forgot, I didn't have US dollars with me, I didn't have any foreign currency. I opened up my wallet and showed him and just pleaded with him in Arabic, basically, please let me pay this with Egyptian pounds. And that person relented and let me buy the visa with the Egyptian pound equivalent. However, I have never heard of that working for anyone else, and I have never heard of it being something somebody does nowadays with all of the issues that Egypt is having with their currency value and wanting foreign currency. So absolutely not. You cannot buy the visa upon arrival with Egyptian pounds. You need to use the foreign currency like euros, British pounds, or US dollars. Any other questions that I did not get in my frequently asked questions section or throughout the video, please drop me a comment below to ask those questions. I would love to help answer any questions you might have about the visa process for Egypt. Thanks for watching my video talking about all the different types of visas to Egypt, how to get these visas, which one I think is the best and most convenient option, and then talking about frequently asked questions regarding the visa to Egypt. It's not a very fun topic, but it's a required topic for anyone who wants to visit the land of the pharaohs. Thanks for checking out this video. I'd love for people to give it a like, leave me a comment with what you thought, or subscribe to my channel to get updated about future videos. I'm Gus with Egypt Adventures Travel. Until next time.